Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final webinar in the 2022 Toolbox series. These webinars are brought to you by the Energy Institute's Toolbox web app for sharing learning from incidents, and I will be telling you a little bit more about that in a couple of minutes. But before we begin, I'd like to thank our Toolbox supporters listed on your screens now. And just to let you know that without them, we would not be able to bring you Toolbox content and webinars free of charge. I am Alexandra Heisu. I will be your host for the day. I work as a technical officer for the Energy Institute, and I'm looking after the Toolbox project. Our session today is focused on road safety, and our speaker is from the Oman Society for Petroleum Services, and we'll talk about hazards associated with driving for work, share lessons learned, and present about the OPAL road safety standard. This session will be recorded and will be made available on the Toolbox website. If you would like to view it at a later date, or if you have colleagues that couldn't join us today, you could share the links with them. Now, this would be the final webinar in the annual series. Some of you might have joined us before. We've run about 10 events throughout the year. And if you are interested in previous webinar recordings, please visit the Toolbox website at toolbox.energyinst.org/webinars. Now, as I was telling you a little bit earlier, this webinar series is in support of Toolbox. For those of you who haven't joined us before and would like to learn a little bit more about Toolbox, what it is, who is it for, Toolbox is a free to access website app for providing learning from incidents and hazards to frontline workers. It includes short, useful safety insights, helping people on site to go home safe. It holds about 550 learning resources to date, including about 100 videos, and most of the content is available in 10 languages. So if you haven't used it already, you can check it out. The web address is available on your screens now. It's toolbox.energyinst.org. And if you would like to be part of the Toolbox community and help support the tool, you can do so by getting in touch with us at toolbox@energyinst.org. A little bit of webinar housekeeping before we dive into the topics. The webinar is recorded and, as I was saying earlier, will be made available on the Toolbox website. All participants will be muted except for the presenters. There is a Q&A section at the bottom of your screen, so if you have any questions that you would like to ask our presenter at the end of the session, please pop those into the Q&A section, and we will tackle those towards the end of the session. The webinars count as CPD, so if you are an Energy Institute member, you can find the CPD template on our website, and if you are not an EI member yet, you might be able to still use the webinar to count with the CPD. Oh, sorry about that. If you don't already know who we are, so the Energy Institute is the chartered professional membership body for the global energy industry, and our aim is to create a better and safer energy future for our members and society in general by accelerating a just global energy transition to zero, promote knowledge, skills, and good practice in the energy sector. As part of our work program, we publish hundreds of good practice guidance documents covering the entire energy system, and a few of the topics would be process safety, hydrogen, CCUS, human factors, and a lot of other resources. So if you're interested to learn more about it, please go to our website. It's publishing.energyinst.org. And we also offer a wide range of risk management training courses. So if you would be interested in taking any courses, or you have your colleagues waiting to register, we do have human factors courses, process safety, NEBOSH, IOSH training. And if you're looking to register before the end of the year, we have some good news. We're running a 20% discount on training fees. And you could use this before the end of the year. just input Toolbox 25 when you're booking on our courses, and you'll get a significant discount. Without further ado, I would like to introduce you our speaker for today. We have Anfal Al Alawi on the line. Anfal is the HSE Project Lead at Oman Society for Petroleum Services. Her role is very focused on the standardization of HSE sector standards and aligning those with life-saving rules from IOGP. Anfal also dedicated 10 years of community service at the Women Association at Al as a member of the board, and looked after training, project management and planning, women and children's rights awareness campaigns, and domestic health and safety. Anfal, over to you. I think you're on mute, Anfal.
Yes,
Okay, we
yes.
can
Hello,
hear you now.
everyone. Hello. Nice to meet you, everyone. So, if you can just allow me, I will just share my screen, and so hope you can see my screen.
Looks good, Anfal. Thank you.
Okay. So it's Anfal Al Alawi. Nice to meet you, everyone, and thank you very much, Alexandria, Ibrahim, for the collaboration. This is my first collaboration with the Energy Institute, and I'm looking forward to present OPAL and what has been achieved during the past years in regards to road safety standard. But before I start, I'm not sure everyone knows about OPAL. It's an Omani Society for Petroleum Services. It's an NGO. It has actually been formed, started at 1998, where the idea of OPAL came by just having a training board where the industry, subject matter experts and industry leaders at that time thought that we need to do something more when it comes to lifting competency within the oil and gas industry when it comes to nationals. And then they decided to have OPAL training board. Then few years later, after the hard work that the leaders have been doing the past years, um, um, royal decree had been issued, stated that OPAL should become a society, an NGO. So in 2001, we were officially registered and licensed under the Ministry of Social Development as a society. So since then, we have changed our name to Omani Society for Petroleum Services. So we started the licensing, and our scope is within the oil and gas sector. However, we look into also non-HSE projects like human resource, human capital development, sector skill units, which actually look after the competency of individuals in different disciplines, not only in HSE. And as my role as Anfal in the projects department, so what I do mainly, I actually look into what is the critical area that we have within our operations when it comes to HSE, and how can we unify the standards and set a standard as a best practices. And the reason behind why we need to unify and set best practices because OPALs constitute from a different stakeholders. We have international companies supporting the industry in terms of operation in the oil and gas. So we have different blocks within Oman. From north to south of Oman, we have different blocks where some companies are operating over 20 years. So we decided that whatever international standards that they have and they would like to implement it here in Oman within our operation, we actually sat with them and saw how can we adapt these kind of standards and blend it with our own country law and come up with OPAL standards. That's the whole idea of unifying all HSE standards. So our stakeholders in Oman, when it comes to oil and gas, we have BP, we have Oxy, we have Total Energies, we have ENI, we have CCED Energy, we have PDO, OQ. So a lot of major operators operating in Oman decades ago, some of them are international companies. So OPAL's role is to unify them. So we started actually the first project to unify the standard, HSE standard, back in 2015. However, we issued our first standard, which is OPAL safety standard, back in 2017. After considering the priority of the project, road safety was one of the pain area. It was, and we are still suffering because when we look into OPAL's data sheet when it comes to incident, HSE incident, road safety or motor vehicle incident always happen to be appearing at the first due to the big, large or of operations. And I'm not sure if everyone knows Oman. We are considered as the second largest country within GCC after Saudi Arabia. So Oman is a very big countries and a very big country when it comes to landscape, and we have a lot of remote area still not developed fully. So when it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to roads, and all or majority of the oil and gas concession area within Oman are in remote and desert area. It's not in the city, so to reach those area, it requires a lot of time and operation and effort. And when it comes to safety, we need to ensure the roads are safe enough for the commuting. So that explains why in within Oman's energy sector, we have a quite a high rate of motor vehicle incidents. So we, as OPAL, with our stakeholders, the companies that I have mentioned, we sat together and we said we need to work hand in hand, of course, with the support of Ministry of Minerals and Energy, that we said we need to have a unified standard because the previous practice was, for example, operator A, he or the driver, for example, has to go through different training when it comes to defensive driving, when it comes to having a certain modification in vehicle. And when he goes to a different operator, different block, he or she, the driver, need to follow the operation. So it's a lot of when it comes to expenditure, the contractors pays a lot. When it comes to cost, when it comes to operations, it interrupt a lot of operation time consuming. So we decided to have a unified standard for road safety, which will save time, will save money, at the same time we make sure that we are setting best practices. So that's the story of how OPAL safety standard was born. So it was back in 2017, and our scope was mainly into three main elements, which is the driver specification. OPAL with the stakeholder has looked into what are the competency that the driver need to have when it comes to age, when it comes to, because we have to set a certain age that this driver can drive a certain category. In Oman, if the person reached 18 years old, he or she legally, after going through the Oman Royal Police training, they can get their license. But when it comes to being a professional driver within the energy sector, they need to go through a certain training, and we don't take 18 years old as a professional driver at this stage because they're still in the early stages of learning how to drive. So we set a quite higher age to ensure that this person is really well trained and competent enough to drive a commercial vehicle. As well, when it comes to the second important element, which is the vehicle itself, which is the vehicle, the tool itself that will transport the passenger from point A to point B, what need to be within the vehicle. So we have the coastal vehicle and we have the vehicles that are operating within the blocks, which is in the desert. They need to be slightly modified in a different way than the coastal vehicles due to the hard nature of the operation within the oil and gas concession area. Because if the vehicles are not modified based on safety standard and being retrofit with the safety feature, the vehicles, they won't last. The tires will get expire quickly. The vehicle will age quickly because the vehicle go through the roads for thousands of kilometers, and a lot of roads within our blocks are not paved. So it's a graded road with sand, with mud. So it will really accelerate the aging of the vehicle if we don't do the necessary precautions. So that's number two when it comes to road safety standard, is looking after the safety vehicle specification. Then we look into the journey management and commuting. And again, as I mentioned, Oman is a big country, so the blocks are scattered here and there. So reaching from block A, for example, to block B, we need to ensure that the vehicle is monitored to ensure the safety and security of the driver and the passengers as well. Also, we have another issue when it comes to journey management. A lot of places in the desert area, they don't have a coverage. So in case of emergency, calling for support takes time. So that's why we really emphasize in having the IVMS and link it with the satellite. So that's in brief what is OPAL safety standard, and I'll be presenting in details what does OPAL do, what projects that we have managed to go through with the operators, and I'll be explaining in the coming slide. But before that, since I mentioned about incident in Oman in the oil and gas operation, it's always referred to the motor vehicle incident. So I would like to share a recent incident that happened this year, March 2022. And after the incident, we'll be sharing what went wrong and what is the corrective measures that been taken already, and then we'll go to OPAL safety standard. So Alexandria, I think we'll be receiving question and answer after the presentation, right?
This is correct. If anything comes to mind during the presentation, please pop it in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screens, and we will look at it in the Q&A session at the end. Thank you very much, Anfal.
Okay. So the incident that occurred within this year, of course, we have so many incidents. However, this incident, I thought it's worth sharing with everyone else, and hopefully we can arrange for another webinar that we can reflect on other motor vehicle incident. But after discussion with the team here at OPAL, we thought that sharing this rollover incident, which happened to one of the contractor here in Oman, because there's a lot of learning from this incident. So as you can see the screen, in the 14th of March 2020, it was daytime. The weather condition was perfectly fine. The subcontractor driving a water tanker, he used to go for several trips back and forth to this area. Of course, as you can see, the incident happened in March. However, after investigation, we managed to investigate and take the full details that this person, when it comes to competency, he is competent, because we need to check the defensive driving permit that this person has, because OPAL had issued defensive driving permit for each vehicle category. So, for example, if the driver is assigned to drive the ambulance, he or she should have defensive driving permit for ambulance. If the person is driving rigid or articulated, this person should have the right training based on the vehicle that he's driving. So this person was already competent, and he knows his job. He's been doing this since last year. So he was driving. If you can, I hope that the size of the photos are clear, so you can see exactly. This is a live picture of what happened. So the driver was driving on his day-to-day task, business as usual. So while he was driving here, he actually overspeed, speed, which results into rollover of the vehicle. The person had a serious injury where he actually felt on his arm, and due to overload, and he was bleeding. It was really serious. Unfortunately, after going to the hospital and doing the surgery, he lost his arm. So this is a brief description of what happened exactly. So after the investigation, just one second, can you see the next slide? Alexandria, I hope you can see the next slide. So the next slide is what went wrong. So after investigating with the team and the road safety team, we have found out that these are the findings. So these are the contributing factors of what went wrong. Of course, when it comes to the road design, that we have checked that there were two main factors, speed and also the road design had slightly contributed to this accident because the vehicle rollover occurred. The driver himself was overspeeding. While he was overspeeding, apparently the vehicle itself was quite overloaded, and he overspeed with 20% more than the acceptable acceptable condition. Because within our concession area, in each road there is a posted speed. This is the maximum speed that this driver is allowed to drive. So anyone who's driving beyond that, of course, when it comes to HSE, there is a consequence matrix. However, also part of the consequences is that person might fall into an accident, and this is what happened with the driver. So the other contribution factor was the familiar of the trip, because once, of course, the driver was treated and he was fine, an investigation took place with him. So he was explaining that he was fully familiar with the road, and he said it. I've been going through this road for the past 8 months, and nothing happened. And he was very honest, and he said with the same speed. So he himself, he said, I was really surprised that this time I wasn't lucky. So here, when it comes to inadequate hazard risk, when it comes to risk awareness of the driver, he wasn't there. Although he was trained and competent to drive the vehicle, yet he decided to act, we'd call it overconfidence. And when it comes also to the discrepancy between the original road design speed limit, which, as just mentioned, that it was posted 20 kilometers per hour. However, the speed limit of the vehicle was set for above that. So here, when it comes to speed limiter and multiple speed limiter, because as part of OPAL safety standard, when it comes to vehicle retrofitting, we do set a speed limiter to avoid this kind of incident. And we'll go into detail in other slides how OPAL managed to do this and enforce it within the industry. So when it comes to the third point, which is number 4, when it comes to insufficient IVMS system, which is the in-vehicle monitoring system, because also it's part of OPAL's mandate that each vehicle should have IVMS fitted, where it actually should report second by second data to the system. And if any violation is set, then the IVMS should send an alarm to the journey manager that this driver is overspeeding. Therefore, the journey manager should take an action, and he or she should communicate with the driver and understand what's happening, why this person is overspeeding. And unfortunately, with this case, the IVMS did not trigger that there is a violation. Of course, when it comes to lack of electronic stability control, this system is also one of the mandate of OPAL safety standard. However, after investigation, the vehicle was not set with electronic stability control. So after the incident happened and investigation is done, we made sure that the driver is treated well. So we had another meeting to look at how can we improve this. So after investigation, after several meetings, so there are some actions that need to be taken from OPAL's side, and some actions need to be taken by the company itself. So we decided that we really wanted to reduce the rollover, which is something very common within our concession. And when it comes to driver competency, this incident itself, we had a discussion that we'll put it as part of defensive driving curriculum, because OPAL in a regular basis review the defensive driving curriculum, where we make sure that we always list the recent case study happened to the industry, so the learners can actually see that they are learning and they are hearing what went wrong within something within our own industry, within our own operation. So it gives more impact than just sharing stories from somewhere else, from another country. So these kind of incidents are important for us because we embedded them within the curriculum. So we had a discussion. So the risk of high speed while speeding in 90-degree, this is something that it's quite common because during the defensive driving courses, the instructor actually sit with the candidates and he hear from them what makes them overspeed and what makes them actually doing something that they know that they shouldn't do, because all of them are professional drivers already trained and they have the defensive driving permit. But when it comes to overspeeding, this is something that we have noticed. It's part of the human behavior, the confident, especially those who already within the career for a long time, they have this overconfidence and they feel that they can overspeed safely. So this is something that we have noticed very common with the professional drivers. And then we have discussed what to do in case of vehicle rollover to minimize the consequences. Because most of the vehicles, I would say all of the vehicles within the oil and gas operation are either four-wheel drive or truck or buses. So those vehicles are built and designed to be, it's not a salon car or a coastal car where in case of rollover, the consequences might be different. So all the vehicles are heavy vehicles. So in case of rollover happen, the damage on the vehicle itself as an asset, it's a big damage. It's usually like that. And also when it comes to driver and other passenger, usually they get severe injury. Unfortunately, in the previous years, we have the rollover cases where the drivers and the passenger were actually killed. So part of OPAL mandate when it comes to rollover is to retrofit a rollover protection bar, which actually something need to be modified. It's not something that's built in normal vehicles. These vehicles operating within oil and gas operation, as per OPAL's mandate, they need to be refitted with the rollover protection bar, which actually prevent the vehicle from rolling over and rotating over and over, so the passenger can be stable, not to go through the impact of the rotation of the vehicle. Um, so when it comes to increasing effectiveness of IBMS system, um, in OPAL we do have a special procedure when it comes to IBMS system. So what we do, we make sure that whoever comes claiming that the IBMS service provider, we look into the permits that they have from the Oman Telecom Authority, from other authorities in Oman that they're licensed as an IBMS vendors. Then we look into their commercial registration, that they are registered to do this kind of business within Oman. Then we look into their reports. Also, we do a trial session. It's OPAL and the stakeholders. We do a trial session for 3 months to make sure that this system is actually able of capturing the data second by second. And we do assess the IBMS into two ways. One, when it comes to the hardware and also the software of the device itself. So they go through a certain procedure until OPAL and the stakeholders, the technical committee, give us assurance that yes, this IBMS vendor, they have the capability to feed us with the right data based on OPAL or safety standard. And those IBMS vendors who are not meeting our requirement, they go for another round of surveillance to make sure that they're meeting our standards. So in the coming slide, I will be explaining in depth what is OPAL IBMS system is all about. So when it comes to behavior, this is something that we have noticed is one of the biggest contributor because the drivers are driving the vehicle. So we made sure that communication is there, awareness is there. In fact, OPAL we had a OPAL forum, incident learning this year, April, after the incident in March. So in April 6th, I remember, we had the quarterly OPAL incident sharing forum. However, that theme of that forum, it was the second edition, it was all about road safety. So we had the stakeholders, we had the people who were involved, and we start talking about what went wrong and how can we prevent it. So this is in summary of the incident that happened early this year. And regarding the driver, I'm sure everyone is concerned what happened to the driver. He's with one arm. So when it comes to his career as a professional driver, unfortunately, his career as a professional driver is ended because he cannot drive with one arm. So the company made sure that he's fully insured and everything, and they make sure that there is an alternative uh, job is actually given to him. So this is in summary regarding the incident that happened this year. So we'll be going to a OPAL safety standard, and then after that we'll open a session for Q&A. So road safety standard second edition, we will be rolling out December 18 when we have the seniors and the ministry endorsement. Because we have, as I mentioned, we have released the first standard in 2017. So the second edition will be released soon by next week. When it comes to what is in OPAL Safety Standard second edition, it's the same element as I mentioned, focusing on the driver, his or her competency, training need to be done. When it comes to vehicle specification, what type of vehicle operating within our industry, what HSE safety, security, modification, retrofitted need to be done. So this is all addressed. When it comes to what type of inspection, we call it RAS, which is Road Worthiness Assurance Standard. It's a mandate that all vehicles operating within oil and gas operation, the vehicles need to go for annual check beside the Royal Omani Police check, because we have two checks. All registered vehicle in Oman, they need to go annually for check with ROP. However, when it comes to oil and gas operation, they need to have a different check. It's a more thorough, robust check where they check each part of the vehicle to ensure that the vehicle is in a safe condition to operate within our industry. And then the third element is when it comes to journey management, the commuting, private commuting, IVMS, multiple speed limiter, a dual speed limiter. So all these are specific in details. So when it comes to the objective of road safety standard, as I mentioned, it's to unify, because unification is important when it comes to implementing any procedure, not only with HSE. If everyone is aligned, if the operators are aligned, if the stakeholders are aligned, then they will communicate that to the contractor. The contractor will communicate that to the subcontractors, and the chain goes down. But if each operator operating, they have their own standard when it comes to road safety, it will cause a confusion. And as I mentioned, it causes a lot of time consuming. And when it comes to cost, it's costly. So the raise of road safety standard for the industry save life through reducing road traffic incident, because we are tackling the most critical contributor to the road safety incident, which I mentioned, driver, vehicle, and the journey management. Unify defensive driving training and assessment strategy. So what we have been doing is OPAL had approved all these centers who are providing defensive driving courses, not only approving the center by auditing the center, making sure that they are, for example, ISO certified, they are having systems in place. When it comes also to the inspector themselves, who are the inspector? Who are those who actually coaching and teaching the drivers how to drive well when it comes to defensive driver? Are they having the right competency? If yes, then we approve them. If not, they're not having the right competency, then they need to go through a different type of course, which we call at OPAL train the trainer course. So we can upskill them, enable them to be approved and to deliver courses in defensive driving. So this is defensive driving training and assessment. And when it comes to assessment, by the way, for example, I'm a driver. I've been trained uh, with the training provider A. If I want to be examined and make sure that I'm competent and I manage to get the permit, I need to go to another training provider for assessment. It's not within the same training provider who actually trained me, just to avoid conflict of interest and to ensure that quality is in place. So that's something that also OPAL is looking after it. And since we started, we have over 20,000, we have issued over 20,000 permits, which mean over 20,000 drivers who are driving within our operations and they are competent to drive their vehicles. Um, when it comes to aligning minimum vehicle specification and vehicle inspection criteria, that would be led to a single RAS sticker. Again, when it comes to RAS, previously each workshop had their own checklist and they will look into different items in the vehicles. However, now we have minimum requirements when it comes to RAS checklist. So each workshop, they have an inspector who is, again, this inspector is actually approved by OPAL because they do two type of tests as a vehicle inspector. They go for theoretical tests, so it's actually taking place here at OPAL. They come at OPAL, and we ensure that they have the knowledge about road safety standard, and they have knowledge about the country law, the road traffic law issued by Royal Omani Police. So we make sure that they have the knowledge. So we'll assess them based on that. And then there is a practical assessment where actually OPAL's auditor go to the workshop that he's working for, and they will evaluate this person why he's actually inspecting a vehicle. So it's a two type of verification, and then if this person actually go through and succeed, then he is approved as OPAL RAS inspector. So we go through that as well. And by the way, the defensive driving training and assessment, RAS inspection, vehicle verification is all automated. So since we started the project, when it comes to standardizing, we also work with the developer to make everything remotely, and all the inspectors, the defensive driving are doing the assessment, registration, issuing the permit, everything is online. So when it comes to standardized performance criteria in vehicle monitoring system and IVMS vendor approval process, so as I mentioned, we make sure whoever comes to OPAL and claim that they can provide IVMS system based on OPAL, we take them on board and we do assessment. So whoever actually meet our criteria, they are within our business. Who are not meeting OPAL's criteria, we make sure that they can invest in their companies so they can be within OPAL's community when it comes to providing IVMS. I hope it's clear so you can see defensive driving permits. So defensive driving permit and training assessment, this is the permit. This is how it looks. So as I mentioned, and you can see here, there is a name of the person, the verification number, when this card was issued. It's linked also with the Royal Omani Police because I've mentioned earlier that in Oman, if person reach 18 years old, this person is legally to drive. However, when it comes to OPAL or working in oil and gas or professional driver, they need to go through a different or extra course, which is defensive driving permit. And you can see there is a QR reader because to avoid any fraud of permits. So we make sure that whoever scanned and the all information goes to OPAL database. So it gives an assurance that this person actually the card is genuine and the person is actually approved by OPAL, because based on our experience since we launched this project a few years ago, unfortunately, we have found out and discovered there's a lot of people who actually frauding the OPAL sticker. So they claim that they are approved by OPAL, and some of them already got a job based on fraud defensive driving permits. And when we found out, we stopped it. We stopped it because it's illegal. We stopped it because it's unsafe, because we can all imagine the consequences of someone who's driving, for example, the fuel tank, claiming that he is competent to drive it, but he's actually not. So it's like a ticking bomb just going through our operation. So that's why we have the road safety team. They do randomly check spot within the different location to ensure that whoever driving within their operation is actually legally approved to drive the vehicles. So I've mentioned also about RAS. So I have pictures of what is RAS. Again, it's a Road Safety Assurance Standard. You can see here, this is an actual picture of the workshop. So based on OPAL's road safety standard. There's so many things need to be as a minimum requirement in order for OPAL to approve a workshop. One of the requirements is to ensure that this workshop has a CCTV camera. And again, it's linked to OPAL database where anytime some people who are actually from HSE department or quality mark department or even OPAL CO, if they would like to check how many RAS workshop are approved or under the approval process or hasn't been approved. So everything, we have all the data, we have the records of the CCTV camera. It's everything. It's mentioning everything is clear. So this is to assure quality and assure there is no any illegal businesses have been carried out. Due to time, I know I have less than 5 minutes, so I'm trying to go a little bit speed, but I think we still have time for Q&A session. So when it comes to in-vehicle monitoring system, again, as we mentioned, when it comes to cross-sector unification, IVMS was really big task in OPAL. And most of you don't know that we started actually approving IVMS vendors since 2019. So it was the first project that after we issued the road safety standard, we said we'll work we'll work with the IVMS vendors. Defensive driving RAS actually came after 2019. So far we have 11 IVMS vendors. I know you might be surprised, like, oh, only 11, but trust me, those 11 are the best that what we have at the moment. We've been approached by a lot of IVMS vendors, but after evaluating and research, we did a lot of work with them. They cannot keep with the OPAL minimum standard. So we gave them a grace period, and they are actually uh, under review. So we might approve others within the next year. So when it comes to safe journey management course, which also I mentioned, so this is one of OPAL recent project we started last year. So OPAL, we actually announced again unified safe journey management course, where all stakeholders has agreed and endorsed that yes, we need to make sure that the journey management or the journey supervisor or the journey management personnel himself or herself are actually understanding and knowing OPARO safety standard, knowing the procedure, knowing the permits, because in OPARO safety standard we have a permit for night driving. So we don't allow night driving at the concession area due to the level of visibility is difficult. As I mentioned, it's a desert, so we don't have lightings everywhere. So for that, it's a different procedure. It has to take several approval. So all these kind of processes, procedure, consequence metrics, in terms of emergency, what the journey manager or journey supervisor should do, this is all being taught within this course. So due to time, I'm done with OPARO safety presentation as well with the incident shared today. So I'm looking forward to hear from you. If you have any questions, if you would like me to go through any of the previous slides, please let me know. Alexandra, how are you doing with time?
We still have over 10 minutes left for any questions, and I see that we have 3 questions in the Q&A section. But before we move on to that, I wanted to thank you for the great presentation, and we can have a look Now we have 3 questions. Thanks very much for everyone who's added these to the section. The first question is going back to the incident that you shared, Anfal. There's a question on anything being different during the incident, and specifically looking at the load stability on the occasion. So I think the question here is, was the tanker perhaps only partially filled, or was it filled in compartmentalized load space? And also there's a note here that it appears in the aerial photo that there was a second, more gradual bend available to the driver. Do we know why perhaps the driver didn't take that route and proceeded to the 90-degree turning instead? Is this information available, or is it something that we can share?
Okay, I will answer this question and then we'll go to the first question because I forgot what's the first question. So sorry for that. So regarding this question, yes, we all noticed that. But again, when it comes to the investigation result, it's driver's behavior, and it's just overconfident. And as I mentioned, that since he'd been doing that task for the past 8 months before the incident happened in March. So, and he was always taking that route. So he was like, what would happen? It didn't happen before, so nothing will happen. And actually, I did met people who actually met the injured person, and they told us that he himself, when he was actually, bleeding, he was a very brave guy, by the way, and he said that I knew something will go wrong. And it was very brave from him that he admit that he knew that something will go wrong, but he didn't expect that it was that day meant to be unfortunately ending his career as a driver. And this is something that we have always discussing with the training provider instructors, that at the end, the driver is responsible to take the right decision. Even though, for example, the journey manager will ask him, you need to take route A, stick with route A. But based on the road condition, weather condition, the driver is responsible to divert. However, the driver needs to inform the journey manager why I'm changing my route or I'm diverting, because I think this road is safer. And this is something when it comes to empowering the drivers. And this is also part of the objective that we're trying to enhance the defensive driving courses, is also allowing the driver to take ownership and responsibility and empower them to take their own decision. So this is something that we're looking into, because when we go to the investigation result, we see that why he didn't take this road, it's safer. But keep in mind, when those drivers, most of them are not high skilled drivers. So when it comes to the organization structure, they are actually considered as unskilled. So they have a lot of layers to reach to their manager. So when it comes to the way that they operate, is like, do this, do that, do that, and they will follow. But now, since the accident and incident that we have seen, so we want to give more empowerment to the drivers to take their own decision. However, informing and aligning with the journey manager. So I hope that answering the question, that this is something that we took into consideration, that we want to empower drivers to take safer decision, because they are
Thank you
alone
very
actually
much.
in the roads. Okay, so I hope I answered this. The first question, please, Alexandria, can you remind
The
me?
first question about the incident was if we have any information if the tanker was perhaps only partially filled or filled in a compartmentalized load space. So I'm not sure if this is something that we have details on.
You mean the overload of the vehicle? I'm not sure if I got your.
I think that's the question. Yes, I think that's the question from Scott.
Okay, as per the OPAL's procedure, each vehicle should be loaded at a certain load. Above that, the driver should not drive. And this is again when it comes to daily check of vehicle, the driver, and this is part of drivers empowerment, that the driver is responsible to make sure the vehicle is safe. Also when it comes to loading and offloading is actually done, the procedure is done properly. It's not only with road safety standard, it's also within Oman Royal Police rules. So anyone is not securing the vehicle load, and the load of the vehicle happened to drop off while the vehicle is in motion, so it's a fine. So the driver will get consequences. So with this case, they were overloaded. However, sometimes people would have shortcuts when it comes to, like, it's okay, you can go. However, he shouldn't have the approval to go. And again, going to empowerment, we are working very hard to ensure that the driver are empowered and implementing the unsafe work. So it's from the top management up to the lowest grade in any organization with the oil and gas, that to give the empowerment. If they see that this is unsafe, then they need to raise the issue, and we call it a stop card.
Thank you very much for that. We'll be moving on to the next questions. There are a few related to the program. So we do have a question on the usage of forward driver facing cameras as part of the program. And also there is a question on, just bear with me a second, because probably we can tie these two together. There's another question on the program about in-vehicle drive-along or behind-the-wheel assessment with a trained driver assessor. So do we use forward front cameras, and also, excuse me, do we include in-vehicle drive-along or behind-the-wheel assessment with assessors?
When it comes to OPAL Road Safety Standard Second Edition, this is one of the major change within the OPAL Road Safety Standard, because, as I mentioned, this is our second revision. So we have learned a lot since our first release of the standard. There are so many things that we did not include at that time back in 2017. So when it comes to fatigue management camera, yes, we do have it as a process. When it comes to like driving after 2 hours, the driver is mandated to stop the journey and rest. When it comes to using the latest technology, we will be implementing the fatigue camera facing the driver only, not the passenger, because also we looked into the privacy of the passengers. So the camera will only facing the driver, and it will detect the facial expression. The driver is tired. The driver, if God forbid, is going into heart attack. He's not focused. If he's using his mobile, for example, which is illegal, so it will all trigger, and the journey manager will be alert. So this is available within the second edition, and moving forward with the third edition as well after 2 years from now.
Thank you very much. And moving on to the next question from Panos. Panos is asking us, how do you ensure that defensive driving instructors are up to date with current industry needs?
Thank you for the question. And as I mentioned, that we always make sure that there is a committee. At OPAL, we have a training provider steering committee, where the training provider's manager sits in a regular basis with OPAL, and we look into the incident that occurred, what went wrong, what is the latest technology, and based on that, we gathered it all and we update our defensive driving curriculum. So this is happening in a regular basis.
Okay, and I think we only have time for one final question, which is coming from Samuel. And Samuel would like to know if employers are responsible for compensation for accidents that happen on the way or coming back on the way to work or coming back from work using public or private transport mode. Yeah, I think that would be the last one that we can take. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. The employer is responsible, and in Oman, when it comes to our law, we have a law when it comes to business trip. So anyone who's leaving their houses from, for example, point A to point B, which is the workplace, and something happened in between, either he's going to work or heading back home, so he is eligible to be compensated. However, after the investigation, it really need to indicate that this person is taking the usual road or the approved road. Any diversion of the road going here and there, and then something happened in the middle, so this is, it will have another uh, consequences. So yes, we do have, and by the way, the employees, the major stakeholder, they do insure their employees. They do have this medical insurance, so they are covered.
Okay, thank you very much, Anfal, for the great presentation. Thank you for taking the questions. And I believe that the OPAL road safety standard is available free of charge, right? So as a PDF, as a downloadable PDF. So I will be sending some useful links for all the attendees following the webinar, just in case you would like to have a look, as well as browse through the toolbox categories. We do have a category specifically addressing driving incidents, so I will be including that as well in the post-event email. Is there anything else, Anfal, as a closing bit before we finalize the webinar?
Not much. I've really enjoyed the discussion, and I hope that everyone really take it forward when it comes to raising the awareness with road safety, not only within the day-to-day businesses. I hope that this discussion also continue when everyone goes back to their families, to their loved ones, to ensure that we raise awareness, because it's one of the paining area. And we always say that vehicles are means of transportation. They're not means of killing people. So I hope everyone is safe. And if you guys driving back to your home, so make sure that you apply defensive driving methods. And we wish you all safe driving always.
Thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. It was lovely having you online, Anfal.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.